Hi, Lavanya. Welcome to the What to Expect podcast.
Hi, Laura. Thanks so much for having me.
So happy to have you here. You're a debut author writing a rom-com all about Bollywood, Indian families, big family weddings, and everything. So I'm so excited to chat with you to talk about your journey, how to get debut, your romance journey, because obviously you're writing romance, and
Mhm.
all of the other fun things. So Lavanya, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Lavanya Lakshmi. As you said, I am a debut author. I grew up, I was born abroad. I was born in India. And then when I was really young, my dad's job moved us around a lot. So I've actually lived in 9 cities, over 4 countries, a true sort of expat traveling kid. But I ended up coming to the US for college. I lived in New York City for 9 years. And then about 6 years ago, I moved to Toronto, where I currently reside. And now I'm a full-time Canadian.
Oh my gosh, I love it. You're living the dream.
Yeah, it was a great way to grow up for sure.
Yes, I feel like I lived in Europe for 14 years and I ended up
Mhm.
moving about 6 years ago. And it's a total shock just leaving the city and then coming to a new place where you actually move country. So that's like a
Yes.
huge, although Toronto's a little bit similar to New York, but
Yeah, I've definitely only ever lived in big cities. So sometimes I love reading small town romances or small town stories because it's just such a different experience that I've had. And it's so nice to get those perspectives.
yeah. All right. So let's talk about your journey to get this book
Mhm.
published. You're a debut author. So this is your book baby, but talk to us about
Yeah.
like how do you get started with writing? Were you a romance reader? Were you like actually a writer, like different stories, and then it just evolved into where you are right now?
Yeah. I'd always written through my life, but very casually, never with a real purpose of fit. Like I'd have I think a lot of people feel like this. You have this great idea and maybe you write a couple hundred words of it and you don't really come back to it. And so I have a lot of half finished things from when I was younger. And then when I was in grad school, I I started to write fan fiction. And it was the first I took me a little while to start to admit that, and it's taken me a little while to start to admit what fandom for, but it was for Twilight. This was back when, yes. Are you a Twilight? Did you love Twilight
I
too?
have not read Twilight, but I love all the fan fiction books that came out of Twilight. So I have Twilight has a soft spot. It's one of the things I just missed Twilight when it happened.
Yeah.
But there's so many books that came out of Twilight
Mhm.
fan fiction that fandom that is just it's a gift that keeps on coming.
It really is. And I think the fact that there are so many authors that across a lot of them are romance, but it's across
Yeah.
a lot of different types of romance. And I think the fact that there are so many authors who are now published that came from that fandom, it speaks to the quality of writing that was happening in the fandom. I have to say, I'm not trying to distance myself from it. I liked Twilight, and then once I read the fan fiction, I was like, oh no, this is what I like more about it than the actual story itself. But that was sort of the first time that I really started to finish stories. I started to write things with an ending. I started to write things that people were reading and responding to and giving me feedback on. So I'd say that's kind of where I got the bug. And much like some of the authors, the well known authors, I also, this was like almost 15 years ago now. I also had an agent approach me for my Twilight fan fiction and wanted to turn it into a published book. But I was really young at that point, and I was in New York City, and I was just not disciplined and I was not focused. And so that never sort of came to fruition. And it was a bit of, I would say it was like a low point for me because I thought I'd failed and I was like, okay, I can't be a writer. I can't do this well. And I sort of stepped away from writing for a long time. And then years later, my best friend, who I actually met through the same fandom, started to query and she wrote a novel that she started to query. She got an agent, she got a publishing deal, and she and I were talking, and it really just sort of reminded me that this was still something that I wanted to do, even though I had sort of put shelved that dream for a little while. And it was right towards when the pandemic was ending. So I said, what if I just try to write this book and see where it takes me? And I see what I can do with this one book. And that happened to be the debut that sort of got picked up. And it took a while, but it was really the thing that I needed to sort of put a book together in a proper way and not just write random pieces here and there.
I love this story because I think a lot of times writers think that it's a one linear path, that it's once you have an agent, you get a book deal, you get a and the reality is just you take one step forward, 20 steps backwards, you
Yeah.
learn, you network. A lot of it's networking, a lot of it's connecting with other writers and having a
Yeah.
community. And it's not a lonely process of you come with the story and the story fleshes out.
Now, with the benefit of hindsight, I see how much I was like learning during that period. I was learning what story structure was like. I was learning how long a book should be. When you write, you're like, I'm just going to write. I don't know what a book length is. And all these things sort of prep you. And then when I came back to writing what would be my debut novel, I had a lot of skills in my toolkit, if you will, that made the writing so much smoother. And I think it paved the way for this to become my debut novel. I think believe a lot in things being the way they are for a reason. And I think it was kismet that this was always going to be the book that I became a published writer with. It's the book that I am the most proud of that I've ever written.
I love this. So let's talk about Leave and Come Back, which actually
Yeah.
takes this trope that we normally don't see, where we a young woman returning to a strange family wedding, like a big traditional Indian wedding that's like a lot of events, and her boyfriend messes up and then ends up like she ended up like be like, we kind of have to fix this, so we had to act like strangers, and you
Yeah.
have to fix the bridge. Which like typically we see with big weddings, we see fake boyfriend like
Yeah.
relationship and like fresh proximity, and this is we actually have to pretend that we don't know each other.
Yeah.
So talk to us about it. Talk to us about like how did the story came about and what led you to this particular trope that is so niche that I love this so much.
Thank you so much. There's two things that I came to this story with. I love romance novels. I think that they're brilliantly structured and they understand their readership so well. So when I was like thinking about how to write it, I just wanted to make sure I was writing something that felt exciting and interesting to readers as well as to me. And sometimes writers have written stuff so well that I was like, oh, I don't want to touch the fake dating. People have done it so much better than me. There were two things that sort of that are a little, I would say, less common in romance novels and that are in my book. The first is that the characters actually get together right at the beginning of the novel, which I know is very different because usually they spend the whole novel sort of having this push and pull. For me, the reason I did that is because of some stuff that would happen later. It made more sense for them to be together. But also, I had this thought one day when I was drafting, and I was thinking about why the HEAs, the happily ever afters in romance novels, it's like the primary rule. It's that you have to have a happy ending. And the book does have a happy ending. But I was thinking about like, how do characters know when their happy ending is, right? They know because the author has sort of structured the book that way. But what if there was a character who thought it wrong? And so the idea is that these two get together right at the beginning of the book and they think they're at their happy ending. But there's so many other issues to actually address that they're not at their happy ending. They have to go through these things. They're a couple, but they're like still not happily ever after yet. And so they go through these things together to get to that point where their relationship is solid and firm. So that was one of the original plays that I wanted to put into the book. And then from there, the book is loosely based on a Bollywood movie, which has the same plot. So the hero has to pretend to be strangers with the heroine. And it's just my favorite movie of all time. It's so fun the way they have to secretly flirt with each other and they're always avoiding family members and they're like hiding in corners. And it's so much tension, but it's romantic too, because they're just the whole time, they're just want to be together. And so I loved the idea of being able to write that. And so that's where I've been calling it fake not dating. So instead of forced proximity, they have to have proximity after they've just gotten together. And all they want to do is like be near each other and touch each other and kiss each other. And secondly, they have to pretend not to know each other when clearly they're halfway falling in love. That was like truly some of the most fun stuff I got to write.
That is so fun. Talk to us about the title of the movie so listeners can pick it up, can actually watch the movie.
Oh yeah. I forgot I didn't name it. It's name dropped in the book. It's called Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge, which is very long. So it often goes by the acronym DDLJ. So if you just type in DDLJ Bollywood, you'll get access to that movie. It's probably one of the most famous Bollywood movies. It's I don't know, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days meets Jerry Maguire. It's just so popular.
Oh my gosh, I love this. All right, so let's talk about introducing an Indian wedding, 2 weeks, scheduling, like putting it all together. What was the process? What was the most challenging part of your process of like setting it up, like in this time constraint that you have to build like all these different benchmarks? along with meddling aunties and
Yeah.
events and specific things that need to be described that immerses the character into this experience.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I will say originally I didn't do that. It was set over a month or two or
Yeah.
the entire summer. And when my agent read it, he said, I see what you're going for, which is a realistic way, but you actually have this great timeline set out by the wedding itself. If you just take it from the wedding events, most weddings are 1 to 2 weeks in Indian celebrations. By tightening that timeline, you make everything, every interaction means that much more, right? Everything has that much more weight. Leo, who's the hero, has so much less time to change the opinions of the family around him. And so everything he does, every mistake he makes counts that much more. And from there, it was quite easy to structure because I've been to so many of these weddings. In fact, the wedding in the book is loosely based on the wedding of two of my best friends. So the ceremonies, the structure, like all of that, I was just able to sort of pull from my own knowledge and experience. And the thing I knew that I wanted to do was like have these sort of set pieces where the characters are going through very intense emotional, could be confrontation, could be yearning, could be like, but they're very in their emotions, but all around them, this big wedding is raging on. And so they have to participate as family members or as guests of honor in the motions of the wedding, while also inside there's so much happening behind the scenes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this book could be a perfect movie, like a perfect rom-com that you have all the events, you have beautiful wedding, big family celebration, and then you have the hijinks. So we're strangers.
Yes.
Well, readers, Leave and Come Back is coming out. You should definitely pick it up, have it, read it, enjoy it, pre-order it, tell all your friends about it. Let's actually talk about your reading life. What books do you tend to read now?
I have always been, I will read anything, any type of book. The only genre I don't read is horror. And that's not because I don't like it. It's because I'm such a scaredy cat that I won't sleep for weeks. And it actually makes me very sad because there's some really interesting, really cool horror books out there
Yeah.
that I'm like, "Oh, I can only read you when I'm like ready to not sleep for a bunch of time."
Yeah.
But I'll read anything. I love romance, obviously. I read lit fic. I'll read murder mystery occasionally. I like the sweet spot of commercial literary fiction. There's a couple books on my list that I'm going to recommend that I think fall into that place. But if it grabs me, I'll honestly read out anything. And I think the thing I've really enjoyed about that is I'll read all the romance books and it helps me. Firstly, I love it. I'm so entertained and fulfilled by romance books. They're so warm and they're heartwarming. But when I read other books, it's really always interesting to me to see the kind of story structures they choose, or the pacing, or the way that they write their books. So often I will read non-romance genre books once or twice, once as a reader and then once as sort of a writer, to really understand the way that the author has made the choices that they have to set up the book as well as it is. Especially if I love the book, I'll read it a couple of times.
I love this. And you also reread The Summer Sisters, which is coming out in movie. There is a movie in
Stop it. Really?
Yes, I think it's Netflix. Like there's some movie adaptations.
Oh my God. I didn't know this. You have just broken the most exciting news to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I read Summer Sisters by Judy Blume pretty much every summer. I don't know. It started a couple years in a row. Every time it was summer, I just felt like reading that book. And if you haven't read it, it's a book that follows two female childhood friends from when they're like 7 to when they're, I think, in their 30s. And so I didn't read it when I was 7, but when I first read it, I was in my teens. And so I've also been reading it. And sometimes I'll be in a different era of their lives and I can see it from a new perspective. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited it's going to be a movie. And I'm so nervous. Oh my God, I hope they get it right.
No, I hope so. They get it right. So let's talk some book recommendations. You got quite a few books to recommend, so we can start.
Yeah.
I can give you some books if you need. So
I have my list right here.
Perfect.
My sort of holy grail, I think, romance novel is a book called 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. It's my favorite thing because whenever I mention that book, if the person has read it, they're immediately like, yes, that one. That's the one. It's thoughtful, it's sexy, the romance is so wonderful. I love She has 2 timelines going, one set in 7 days in a week in the past, and then one set currently, and she alternates, and that's such a complicated thing to pull off, but she does it so well. And the thing is, the book is funny, but it has so much of substance to say about the characters, about book publishing, about recovery, about pain management. I just find that it's like you read you read this book and it's about so many things. And then it's also such a good romance. It's such a lovely she pulls off such a good trick there. It's one of my favorite books of all time.
Yes. I love
Um,
7 Days in June. I love the fact that it's their first encounter after not seeing each other for a long time. Is it a book event where she's writing paranormal, like
yeah.
witchy romance and like smutty romance, and he's like a well-known lit author, and he's
Yeah.
there to support her.
And he's never ashamed of her writing, which
Yeah.
I think is such a beautiful thing. He doesn't look down on her genre. He thinks she's so talented. And then there's that line where she's "Stop writing about me," and then he says "you first," which I think is just a Hall of Fame line. That's wild.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine coming up with that line and just being very chill about it.
Yeah. I love this. All right. Let's talk to your next recommendation, which it's on my TBR. I'm
Okay.
there. I just need to read this. And so talk to us. The View was exhausting.
Yeah, The View was exhausting by Kayla Clements and Anjali Datta. It is a fake dating celebrity romance, but I would say it's kind of got it's a little more literary on the romance side, but it's a fake dating celebrity romance between a young rising star actress. She's South Asian. I would say now you could probably picture a Zendaya type, somebody who's really popular. And she has been, at the beginning of the book, she's been in this fake dating relationship with this socialite playboy for several years. And they're like teetering on something more. So you actually catch them at a very interesting point in their fake dating. But then a couple of things happen. But it's another one of those books that contains so many levels of what it's about. It's about the romance. It's about people who have walls up and how to break them down and how to connect with each other, how to trust the people you love. But it's also about the prejudices in show business. It's about living a public life and what it means to do that. It's about how the way in a public life, the way people perceive you can often become how you define yourself, and then when you fall in love, somebody sees you for who you really are. So it's very, really lovely, really cool. You can just see it in Saint Tropez and set at the Cannes Festival and set in London. It's a very cool book. So I would highly recommend it and it's a really easy, great read. And I will say both 7 Days in June and The View was exhausting, were edited by my editor. So we all have the same editors. I read those books when I was first going over my first drafts, and those books were like help shape my book. In fact, my novel was in first person until I read 7 Days in June. And then I was like, no, what am I doing? It should be in third person. And then when I changed to third person, everything just clicked so much better. So I always tell my editor, I was low-key stalking you before you even became my editor.
Okay, first things first, like how much work was it to change the first person to third person? Because I feel like that's a huge undertaking.
This was not on my list, but if I can recommend a craft book for any writers out there, I actually have it. I keep it close by all the time. If you can see it, it's called Refuse to be Done by Matt Bell.
Yeah.
Yes, you know it. And he gives this piece of advice that I haven't seen anywhere else, but really worked for me, which he says is write the first draft and then rewrite the second draft, meaning retype every word. Have your document up once and then retype it. So you're like deliberately choosing every sentence that goes in there. So that was part of, it really tells you what's filled out your novel, and you're making the active choice for each word that's going in to go in again. And that it's nice because in your drafting, you're sort of just trying to get through the sentences, right? So it's some of the best writing advice I've ever heard. I do that for all my books now in my process. But that was when I incorporated the change from first to third. So I was like retyping and I was like, she, and then I was like sort of typing it all out.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. That's a really great way to look at your first draft, which is messy and it's just uncomfortable. And there's a lot of things that you're like, I'll come later to come. And then you're realizing actually typing it out, the act of actually sitting and looking at it and then writing it again, it probably gives you a new perspective that allows you to see the story even more fleshed out than probably just editing from that original messy first draft.
That's exactly it. I was like, I'll try this, and if I don't like it, I won't do it. But then when I started doing it, I realized what it was like rediscovering the work, because I was even just retyping the words, was like, oh, why did I use this name? Or why does this character have this trait? What are the choices I made? Would I make them again as I'm going into my next draft?
Well, thank you for this great tip. Listen tomorrow, which actually, I am surprised I have not read this. I read actually Gabrielle's earlier books, and I love them so much. So I'm surprised I have not read this because it's so popular and it is not what you think it is. It is,
No.
but it is such a good book. That's the feedback that
Yes. It's one of the, I will say, I also loved like The Storied Life of AJ Fikri is
Yeah.
also a beautiful, lovely novel. I think this one's better. I think that she uses, it's another story about friendship, and this time it's a platonic friendship between a guy and a girl, and they become video game designers in the early 90s, and that's sort of, the story spans a long time. And but if I told you that, if I told me that, I'd probably like, okay, I'm not sure I'm going to read this book. But the book is again one of those books that just packs in so much about it, and it's like a beautiful character study because you followed these two characters their whole lives, and so you understand so much about them. And she tells a lot of it non-linearly, so you catch the characters when they're like 20 years old, but you slowly find out the things that make them the way they are. And it's about, they both have tragic circumstances that happen to them, and it's about the wounds you carry and healing from that, and or how it changes you. But the thing that surprised me the most, the thing I liked the most, is I think it's a really good book for anybody who creates art to read, because it is about art. It's about what you want to say with your work. It's about how to balance wanting to be successful and your ambition with how to stay authentic. It's about the difficulty, how hard it is to be a creative and just have to, like, how long it takes for success. And I found that there are like passages in there that I read almost like a craft book because they tell me so much about what I'm doing in my writing.
Oh my gosh, I'm bumping this one up. I'm probably going to try it as an audio actually. So that's going to be
Yes, it's really good at audio too.
perfect. And then finally, anything Annabelle Monaghan. I think we both are
Yes.
in the fan club. Love Nora Bozo's script. Love summer
Yes.
romance. Love this love story. I'm looking forward to Dolly.
Me too. One of my, definitely my most anticipated. I will say I met her at a book festival last year, and she was so kind. And I was like, would you consider blurbing my book? And she said yes, and then she did. So it was like a huge moment for me because I do love her book so much. And her prose, her characters, her female characters are always so good. But her prose, the way she writes, she has such a deft hand with her language. And it reminds me, I think she's like romance genre's Nora Ephron. She can just write a really good, really witty sentence that says so many things in it.
Yes, I agree with the Nora Ephron comparison. And oh my gosh, and it's so nerve wracking to ask for a blurb for your favorite author.
She was so sweet. So it didn't make me feel bad at all. I was like, okay, I'm glad I shot my shot.
I love this. And yes, sometimes you just have to ask. You just never know. You can always get a yes, or you may get a no, not right now. It's not forever.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Awesome. Tell us we can find you online.
Oh, yes. I am mostly active on Instagram. So I would say it's lavanya.lakshmi.writes. That's the best place to find me. I have great ambitions to start a newsletter, but I really am not a nonfiction writer. And so even something as a newsletter is like, I've never experienced the kind of writer's block I have when I try to sit down to write a newsletter. So for now, it's Instagram. Now it's fun pictures and captions.
I love you. Thank you so much for being in the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. This was lovely. I will come talk books with you anytime you want.
Thanks for listening to the What to Read Next. For more book lists, cozy reads, and library tips, visit the whattoreadnextblog.com. Your next great read might be waiting there.